So we're in the next section here, 5.3, on multi-step equations with rational numbers. So as we go through and do this, again, practice good techniques and stuff like that. Notice that the instructions on this one, it does say round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. Some of these problems do have decimals, and I'm hoping that you're catching on to the fact that fractions actually are a little bit easier to work with. I'm going to have to pull out my calculator to do several of these to make sure I get them right. If we're working with fractions, though, that tends to kind of be a little bit easier. I'm a little more confident with those fractions than with these larger decimal numbers and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and solve these. You'll notice that we've got to do some distributing here. So again, you want to make sure you're showing your work for each one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply those together. I'll bring the calculator screen up here so we can kind of see what's going on here. So I'll have negative 2.8 times 4. And if you've got a good guess at what that is before you type it in, that's awesome. So this is going to be a negative 11.2a. And then the next one is, let's see, so we've got a negative times a negative. We're going to have a positive here. I'm just going to recall that one. You could do the same type of thing on here on your calculator and multiply those together. We're going to end up with a positive 14, so we're in good shape there. Plus 14 equals negative 6. Again, got to show that right there whether you use a calculator or not. I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides, so that's going to make that a 0, and subtract 14 over here. If you want to reach for a calculator on something like this, I suppose that's okay, but I'm hoping you're good enough at working with integers that you can do some simple problems like this. So this would be negative 20, same sign, find the sum, remember. And then we're going to finish this off by dividing by a negative 11.2. So divide by a negative 11.2. Those are going to cancel. I don't want to show that. And then over here we have negative 20 divided by negative 11.2. Let's just make sure we type that into the calculator correctly. Now I know the answer is going to be positive, so I'm just going to type in 20 divided by 11.2. And let's see what the calculator says. Now it says 1.7857 and so forth. And we want to round our answer to the nearest hundredth. So we're not going to write out this whole thing because that's a really long, ugly decimal number here. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop at the hundredths place. So we're going to write 1.78 or 79. So there's our choice. It's either 1.78 or 1.79. So as we look at this calculator, let's take a look here. We've got 1.78, so this is where we're going to round to. We're going to round to the hundredths place, so we look one past that. So if it's 1.785, we're going to round right here, so this is what we look at. That is enough to bump this up to a 9, so it's not going to be the 178, it's going to be the 179. Okay, so we're going to circle that, and again, that's because we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. We don't have to do that on this one because this is all written with fractions, so let's make sure we're careful here. Again, I don't think we're going to have to reach for a calculator on this because multiplying by fractions is pretty easy. Negative times a negative is positive, and then I have 5 over 1 times 1 over 6, so that's going to be 5 6a. When I multiply here, so something interesting happens right here. Positive times a negative is a negative, and this is 5 over 1 times 4 over 5. That means those 5's are going to cancel, so we end up with a negative 4 right here. And if you needed to show a little bit of work right here, so 5 over 1 times 1 over 6, so there's the 5 over 6. 5 over 1 times 4 over 5, cancel the 5, so there's the 4. Go ahead and do that. So we've distributed through, and then over on the other side we've got this negative 4. I need to isolate the variable term, so I want to get rid of subtracting 4, so I'm going to add 4. Add 4 to both sides, so that would make this a 0. Again, just move that to the other side, it becomes positive. So this is going to be 5 6a, and then over here we have negative 4 plus 4. Again, hopefully that's something we're pretty good at. Different signs, we find the difference. Difference happens to be 0. Now please don't panic on a problem like this. 0 is just as good as any other number. We haven't made any mistakes. We still need to get rid of a fraction in front of the variable, so we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply this side by the reciprocal. 5's cancel, 6 cancels, so we end up with an a, and then 0 times 6 over 5. So this would be 0 on the top, 5 on the bottom, 0 divided by any number, that's going to be 0. So totally okay there. Alright, let's take a look at the next one. This one's got decimals. This one has variables on both sides. So remember, we want to move the smallest one. So I want to move this one to the other side. It's the one that's most negative. So I'm going to add 5.7 to both sides, 5.7n. So I'm going to cancel that off. Now, hopefully we've got a good idea what this would be. The difference is going to be maybe 4 point something, but let's use the calculator to make sure we got this right. So I'm going to do negative 1.4, and we're going to add 5.7, 4.3, positive 4.3. So we've got negative 5.2 plus 4.3n equals 3.4. We're going to move this to the other side by adding 5.2, so I'm going to cross it off here and add 5.2. So we've got 4.3n here. Add these together. Let's see, that's going to be 8.6. Again, if you want to do that on your calculator, no problem. But this is the work that we'd want to show, whether we're doing the work by hand, in our head, on a calculator, or anything like that. So the 4.3s are going to cancel, so we get n over here. Now you might have a good guess at what the answer is on this one, but let's just double check and make sure. 8.6 divided by 4.3. Whoops, 4. Ooh, hit the wrong one there. Whoops, yeah, no, we got that one right. 8.6 divided by 4.3. So 4.3 right there. Now you might notice that 4.3 is half of 8.6. So when we hit enter, it's going to give us an answer of 2. This is twice as big as that right there. So the answer on that one is n equals 2. And then we'll take a look at number 14, and that's going to be the last one for this particular worksheet. So on this one right here, again, we need to get the variable on the same side. So here's what I'm going to do on this one. We've got 4/5 and we've got 3/5. We want to move the smallest one, so that's going to be this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 3/5 from both sides. And at the same time, since the x's are going to end up over here on the left side, I'm going to move this one over there. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So that's going to move this over there. It's going to move this over there. So we end up with 4/5 minus 3/5. That's going to be 1/5. Again, we've got that positive coefficient because the bigger one was positive. And then we've got 7/5 minus 1. Well, that would be, and I'll do this work off to the side in blue, 7/5 minus 5/5. So that's going to be 2/5. Okay, if you want to plug that in your calculator, totally okay. So 2/5, and it's positive. Now everything's written as a fraction, so that's good. We've got a fraction in front of the variable, so I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to go ahead and write that as 5 over 1 if that's okay. So we're going to write 5 over 1. 5's are going to cancel, so we get 1x, or just we'll write plain old x. 5's cancel, so we end up with 2 over 1, or just plain old 2. And that's the answer. So oddly enough, on a couple of these, as we went through and solved them, we ended up with actually pretty nice answers. So we got some integer answers there, an integer answer there, and then we got that ugly one that we had to round to. So make sure if you're using your calculator on those decimal problems, if it's a big long ugly one, round to the nearest hundredth.